Hey, what's going on, folks? Bienvenue. My name is Wade, and this is Sabine River Valley. Today, I want to talk to you about an issue we're seeing with implements, and I want to try to help you figure out how you can make them work with your tractor. Now, this will be really beneficial for new tractor owners, but I also think it'll even be beneficial for some of you old dogs. If you're anything like me, you spend a lot of time researching and agonizing over the best implement to fit your need. You look at things like the horsepower requirement, or you dig into user reviews online, and you try to pick the best possible implement that will work, that will last, and that will do all of that for the best possible price. And after all that, when you finally get the implement home and hooked up to your tractor, you realize that it won't work. And if you're new to all this, you might not know what to do, or you might even think that it's not something that you can fix yourself. Well, I'm here to tell you you can, so don't get too worked up about it. So what is the issue exactly? Well, a lot of these implements use power from the tractor's PTO or power takeoff to work. Power is transferred from the engine of the tractor over to the implement's gearbox through what we call a PTO shaft. And these PTO shafts aren't always ready to just work on your tractor. They're usually too long. And if by some chance you were able to connect one up to both ends without cutting it down first, you could actually do a lot of damage to the gearbox on the implement or even to your own tractor. Now look, I was definitely working the clickbait here. PTO shafts are nothing new for a lot of us. But if any of you experienced tractor owners spend any time in any of the tractor forums, you'll see that a lot of new owners have no clue what to do here. This really is one of those things to owning a tractor that can be extremely confusing at first. So let's go through this, and we'll cut a PTO shaft down for a new ditch bank flail mower. First off, we're going to start with lowering this mower, this implement, to where the gearbox is completely level with the PTO shaft on my tractor. That's going to be the closest point from gearbox to gear shaft. That's what we want to start with, is that closest point. Now this mower is kicked over to the side, so you might think, oh well, it's not center of it. But the thing is that whenever you start moving this out, this goes further back. So this is actually the closest point to the tractor that this ever gets. And now we just want to get it level with it, and that will be the shortest distance ever from that gearbox to that PTO shaft. So I've got my external arm here where I can lower this myself from outside the tractor, which makes this a whole lot easier. So this here is about even across there, and I have my top link pulled all the way in. So this is going to be the closest that gearbox ever gets to my PTO shaft there. So this is where we want to start. This is going to be our starting point. So the next thing I want to do is I want to measure from the locking groove that is on this PTO shaft on the gearbox to the very tip of the PTO shaft on the tractor. The reason why is when we cut this, we need room for you to maneuver the PTO shaft around in there. If you cut it too long and this is pulled in, you can't sometimes you can't get it in place. You know, you've got that joint in there that moves, and you've got to be able to move that back and forth to get to manipulate it into the angle that needs to go. And if you're too close, you won't have the room to start with and then to get onto that PTO shaft. So here, I've got 67.5 inches. So I'm going to look at this multiple times. 67, maybe, no, I would say 67 inches. Yeah, 67 inches. So 67 inches from there to here, to the end of that. So when cutting a PTO shaft, what I like to do is kind of make the whole process as easy as possible, because these things are heavy. And if you're trying to do some weird cuts and stuff and measurements and everything while you're trying to hold it up, it can cause problems. It can frustrate you. You can get tired while doing it, and you might not, you might mess up, right? You might not do it right. So I've got a table that I'll pull out and I'll lay these on. And another thing I've done is I've kind of helped myself see where I need to measure from. So here on this side, we have the locking pin that's going to go onto the PTO shaft of the gearbox for the mower. So this one is going to basically stay on the mower at all times. And this is that pin. Remember, there was that locking groove that we measured from. Well, this pin is going to go into there. And I've put a zip tie on this so I can see where this is while I'm trying to do my measurement. On this side, on the other end, this is what's going to lock onto the tractor's PTO shaft. And I know that I want to go all the way to the end on this one. That's where we measured, right there to the flat side, the end of that PTO shaft. So we know that while we're trying to move this around, we can actually get it onto the PTO shaft without any issues. So I'm going to measure from this pin to the very end of this shaft, to the very end right here. One of the things that you have to be careful about is that if this is too long and you move that mower into its shortest position and this is too long, it can actually shove this through the gearbox on your tractor. This can do major damage to the back of your tractor if you don't have the length correct. So we want to make sure that this is at its shortest point when we're measuring this, so we know that it'll never go further than that point. That's the shortest point. It'll always be able to clear that short point there. So with the zip tie up there, I can actually see where this is. And it doesn't have to be perfect exact, but just, it gives me a reference over there. It helps me to see this while I'm doing it by myself. So right now, I'm looking down at this, and it is 70 inches. And we needed 67, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually, because this is such a long PTO shaft, I'm gonna take another inch away from that. So I'm gonna cut this. I'm gonna bring this down to 66 inches. That'll give me the room that I know that I need, and it's still a super long shaft. So this one is going to be fine for that. If you're using a smaller an implement that's right up next to the tractor where the PTO shaft is much shorter, you might want to be a little careful with cutting it too short, because raising that PTO or raising the 3-point lift up with that implement on a short shaft could actually pull the PTO shaft apart. I'm going to come down 4 inches on the shaft cover and mark that with a Sharpie. Then I like using a zip tie, and I will zip tie this together line these up. It doesn't have to be perfect. I just like getting it straight if I can. And then I'll just take my Sharpie and make a circle with this. For this, I'll use a cutting wheel on my grinder, and just to kind of go around this, it makes it a little easier. All right, there we go. So we've got us a pretty good straight cut around there. So on this, we'll measure out 4 inches. All right. And to cut this shaft, I just like using this bandsaw. That's just my favorite way of doing it. Makes it easy. It just, I don't know, just me. And with this one, I'll use some protection on me. The other shaft's going to slide inside this, so I'll take a file. Kind of. I'm really worried about the inside, but if I see anything on the outside too, if I ever touch this, I don't want it to slice my hands. So I just file that also. And we just repeat the process. So we will measure out 4 inches. So I was wrong a second ago. This is the outside one. So, but I did file around that for my finger's sake. So I did right on that one. But this one, we need to make sure the inside is the best, but we'll still file around that on the outside also. Okay, so there's something that I want to point out on a PTO shaft that might be the most important thing to know on a PTO shaft. And once you learn it, you learn it. It's done. It's over with. But I didn't know the first time I tried to hook one up. And the first one I ever hooked up was for that really large 78-inch flail mower, which had a big PTO shaft like this. And I was standing out there in 106 degrees trying to lift this, trying to get it connected, and I could not get the two ends connected. And what I want to show you is this kind of looks like that they're this bell shape, that it's the same around all the way around, but it's actually not. There is a flat end on one of these ends. Two of the ends are curved. One has a flat end on it. And if you try to take these and put them together with the flat ends not matching up, it will not go together. But if you put the flat end, well, that's not a cut, so let's do this. If you put the flat end together, they match up perfectly, and they'll connect together super easy, as long as you don't have any burrs or anything on there. So in my tractor, I have multiple speeds for the PTO, and between each one is a neutral. So what I can do is pull this basically out of gear, and now on the back, the PTO shaft will spin free. So this, when I have this done like this, it'll help me to get this all connected. It'll make it much easier to get this PTO shaft connected. So there's always a little bit of room to, when you get it lined up, for this to connect to, that you can take the weight off. You've always got, once you get that lined up, you can get it on just a little, just to help take that weight off. Then you can start fighting with the pin inside. There we go. And there was a click. Now, I want to hook this chain up to keep this from spinning around. There we go. So now it'll only spin so much before this will stop and just the shaft inside is spinning.
And it's been so long, you know, 'cause I've been living my whole life wishing I could turn back time, never stop to realize all the while it was going right.
Well, that's it. Not a difficult job, though if you've never done it before, it might seem like it could be, and you might not be too excited about getting out there and doing it, right? But I promise you, if I can do it, you can do it. So, well, I think that's going to be it for this video, and I really appreciate y'all watching, and Lord willing, I will see y'all on the next one.